Good evening, night owls, and welcome to Whisper Crowley. Tonight, I will guide you into a world of darkness, hoping to help you relax and unwind. Perhaps some of you will even drift into a haunting yet soothing sleep. Before we begin, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. And now we begin. What happens to a light that has gone out? A flame that once guided countless ships to safety? Does it become a mere memory, or does it linger, waiting for someone to reignite its glow? The lighthouse loomed in the distance, a silent sentinel against the crashing waves, its once bright beacon extinguished for years. I stood at the edge of the rocky shoreline, watching the dark silhouette against the twilight sky. It was a lonely sight, the lighthouse shrouded in fog, whispering secrets to the ocean. My name is Ethan, and I was tasked with keeping watch over this forgotten place, a duty that felt both noble and hollow. As a child, I had marveled at lighthouses, symbols of hope, safety, and guidance. Now I was left with this one, a relic of the past, where shadows crept and silence reigned. The air was thick with salt, but something else wafted through, a strange, musty odor that made my stomach churn. It reminded me of damp wood and decay, of stories I'd heard from the old fishermen at the docks. They spoke of strange happenings here, of lights flickering in the night and ghostly figures wandering the shore. I had always dismissed them as tales to scare children, but now, standing before the lighthouse, doubt crept into my mind. As I made my way up the rocky path, I felt the weight of the ocean's gaze upon me. The waves crashed violently against the shore, echoing my growing unease. With each step, I could hear the faint sound of metal clanging in the distance, an unsettling rhythm that sent a chill down my spine. It felt as if the lighthouse was alive, beckoning me with its secrets, its history hidden behind those thick, weathered walls. The entrance was heavy, rusted with age, and when I finally pushed it open, the creak echoed through the hollow chamber. I stepped inside, the dim light filtering through dusty windows. My heart raced, the silence was deafening. The walls were lined with peeling paint, and cobwebs clung to the corners like the remnants of forgotten memories. I pulled my flashlight from my pocket, the beam cutting through the darkness, revealing a spiral staircase leading up to the lantern room. The thought of climbing higher sent a jolt of anxiety through me. What lay at the top? What secrets did this place hold? As I started my ascent, each step creaked under my weight, the sound amplifying my fears. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was not alone. Shadows danced just beyond the reach of my light, flickering in and out of view. My breath quickened, a sense of foreboding wrapping around me like a heavy fog. Reaching the lantern room, I paused, the sight before me striking. The great glass lantern stood at the center, though the bulb was long gone. I imagined how it once shone brightly, guiding weary sailors through treacherous waters. Now it was merely a haunting reminder of what had been lost. But there in the corner lay something unexpected, a weathered journal, its pages yellowed and fragile. I picked it up, brushing off the dust. The leather cover felt cold against my fingers. Opening it, I was greeted by spidery handwriting, each stroke laden with emotion. The entries detailed the life of the last lighthouse keeper, a man named Samuel. His words painted a vivid picture of solitude, of watching the storms roll in, of the eerie sounds echoing through the night. But one entry caught my eye, written in a frantic scrawl. I hear them at night. They call to me, begging for help. I cannot leave. A shiver ran down my spine. Was this madness or something more? I flipped through the pages, my heart racing as Samuel's fear seeped through the words. He described how he heard knocking at the door, how shadows flitted past the windows. Each entry grew darker, filled with desperation. The last was unfinished, trailing off into incoherent scribbles. As I read, the noise of the ocean faded, replaced by a low, resonant knocking, like the sound of someone rapping on metal. My heart raced. The door. I glanced over my shoulder, the darkness seeming to thicken around me. The knocking grew louder, more insistent, and I felt an overwhelming urge to flee. I stumbled back, nearly dropping the journal, my mind racing. What if it was the same force that haunted Samuel? What if I was next? Panic clawed at my throat, and I turned to the door, ready to escape this haunted place. But the knocking continued, echoing in my mind, compelling me to listen. "Help us," the voice seemed to whisper, soft yet urgent. I froze, dread pooling in my stomach. It wasn't just the lighthouse that had trapped Samuel. It felt as if the entire island was alive, holding onto something dark and sorrowful. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice shaking. Silence enveloped me, a suffocating stillness that made my skin prickle. I stepped closer to the door, peering through the small window, but all I could see was the thick fog rolling in from the ocean, obscuring everything. Just as I was about to turn away, a shape flickered in the mist, a figure standing at the edge of the rocky path, half hidden in shadows. My heart raced, a mix of fear and curiosity pulling me closer. "Help," the voice called again, more desperate this time. I couldn't tell if it was human or something else entirely. I felt a pull, a need to understand what was happening, to confront the darkness that lay within this place. But as I took a step toward the door, the knocking intensified, reverberating through the walls, threatening to break down the barrier between reality and something far more sinister. I hesitated, the weight of Samuel's words hanging heavily in the air. Would I become another chapter in this haunted lighthouse's story? With every ounce of courage, I opened the door, stepping into the fog. As I did, the cold air wrapped around me, and I was greeted by a chilling sight, the figure standing just a few feet away, its features obscured by the mist. "Help," it whispered again, and in that moment, I knew I was drawn into something far beyond my understanding. The lighthouse, once a beacon of hope, had transformed into a labyrinth of despair, and I was caught in its grasp. The night had only just begun. I stood frozen, the fog swirling around me like a shroud, hiding the figure just a few feet away. My breath quickened as I strained to make out its features. The voice had been faint, almost ethereal, but now it seemed to resonate in the depths of my mind. "Who are you?" I finally managed to stammer, my voice barely above a whisper. The figure remained shrouded in mist, its form shifting and distorting like a mirage, but I felt an undeniable pull, a connection that transcended the fear gnawing at my insides. "Help," it repeated, and this time the sound was tinged with desperation. A chill raced down my spine. I glanced back at the lighthouse, its dark windows resembling hollow eyes watching my every move. The very air felt thick with tension, as if the island itself was holding its breath, waiting for my response. "Help you how?" I replied, stepping closer, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. The figure remained still, but I could feel an energy emanating from it, a mix of sorrow and yearning that tugged at my heartstrings. Inside, it urged, gesturing toward the lighthouse. You must find the truth within. The words hung in the air, heavy and foreboding. My mind raced with images of Samuel's journal, the haunted words he had written. I hesitated, a surge of panic rising within me. What truth awaited me? What darkness had Samuel confronted? But something about the figure drew me in, a deep, unsettling compassion welling up inside me. I knew I couldn't turn back. The night was too oppressive, and I felt the lighthouse calling to me, its secrets begging to be uncovered. With a shaky breath, I nodded and stepped forward. The figure moved aside, and as I passed, I felt a cold breeze brush against my cheek, sending a shiver down my spine. The moment I crossed the threshold, the atmosphere shifted. Something ancient and malevolent loomed, threatening to engulf me. Inside, the air was stale, the remnants of the past lingering like ghosts. I switched on my flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness and illuminating the walls adorned with peeling paint and remnants of old photographs. Faded images of past lighthouse keepers stared back at me, their faces etched with a mix of pride and sorrow. I wondered how many had stood where I was now, grappling with the same haunting decisions. Follow, the figure whispered, its voice echoing softly in the empty room. I turned to see it glide effortlessly toward the spiral staircase. My heart raced as I followed, the old wood creaking beneath my weight. With each step, the tension in the air thickened, almost palpable, as if the walls themselves were watching. As I ascended, the whispers of the ocean faded into an unsettling silence, replaced by the soft sound of my own breathing and the distant echo of my footsteps. Reaching the lantern room, I was greeted by a sight that took my breath away. The room was larger than I had imagined, with tall windows overlooking the turbulent sea. But it was the sight at the center that held my attention. The glass lantern, although dusty and dim, held a faint glow, flickering like a dying star. It pulsed rhythmically, casting eerie shadows across the walls, and for a moment I felt a rush of hope. But as I stepped closer, the hope quickly turned to dread. The glow was not warm, it was cold, filled with a haunting sorrow that resonated deep within me. I could see reflections in the glass, figures distorted and ghostly, trapped within its depths, their faces twisted in anguish. "What is this?" I breathed, my voice trembling. The figure, now clearer in the light, stepped beside me. Its face was obscured, but I could sense the weight of its sorrow. "The souls of those lost to the sea," it said softly. "They are drawn to the light, hoping to find solace. But this light has become a prison, and so has the lighthouse." I stumbled back, a wave of nausea hitting me. "A prison," I echoed, struggling to comprehend. "Why, how? The keeper before you, he sacrificed himself for the light, for the hope of others," the figure explained. "But in doing so, he bound himself to this place. His spirit lingers, trapped between the worlds, longing for release. The light now attracts those who seek guidance, but it is a cruel trick, leading them to despair." Fear gripped my heart as I recalled Samuel's journal. His words echoed in my mind, "I cannot leave." The thought of becoming another lost soul trapped in this cycle sent chills coursing through me. "What can I do?" I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. "How can I help?" The figure's gaze intensified, and for the first time I felt a hint of warmth behind its sorrow. "You must confront the keeper. He is the key. He holds the truth and the pain of this place. Only by facing him can you free the souls bound here. Where is he? I pressed, the walls closing in around me. How do I find him? The figure pointed toward the narrow staircase that spiraled upward, disappearing into darkness. He resides above in the light. You must go to him, but beware, he may not wish to be found. Swallowing hard, I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. I turned to the staircase, my flashlight flickering in the oppressive gloom. The air felt electric with tension, each step upward echoing with the whispers of the past. As I climbed, I could hear the faint sound of knocking once more, reverberating through the structure. It was a rhythm, steady and haunting, as if someone or something was trying to break free. The closer I got to the lantern room, the louder the knocking grew, mingling with a low, mournful wail that seemed to resonate through the walls. "Help me," the voice echoed, more urgent than before. My pulse quickened as I reached the top, the door to the lantern room looming before me like a gateway to the unknown. I hesitated, a chill of dread washing over me. Would I find the keeper waiting on the other side, or something far more terrifying? I took a deep breath, steeling myself against the fear that threatened to engulf me. With a swift push, I opened the door, stepping into the lantern room. The glow intensified, illuminating the space with an otherworldly light. And there, standing before the lantern, was the figure of a man, tall, gaunt, and shrouded in shadows. His eyes were hollow, reflecting the light with an eerie sheen. "Why have you come?" he asked, his voice a hollow echo that sent shivers down my spine. "I am here to help," I stammered, my heart racing as I faced the keeper. "I want to free you, to free the souls trapped here." A grim smile curled on his lips, but it did not reach his eyes. "You cannot free what does not wish to be freed," he replied, his voice dripping with sadness. "I am bound to this light, a guardian of hope turned warden of despair." I felt the weight of his words crash over me, an overwhelming wave of sorrow washing away any semblance of bravery I had. "But you don't have to be," I implored. "You can let go. You can find peace." He stepped closer, and I could see the pain etched into his features. "Peace," he echoed, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. "This light was once my purpose. I sacrificed everything to guide others, only to be bound to this fate. The light calls to me, but it is a curse. I am trapped by my own choices." The knocking intensified, and I felt the room vibrate with energy. I knew I had to reach him, to break through the walls he had built around his heart. "You don't have to face this alone," I urged, my voice trembling. "You can let me help you. We can face this darkness together." His expression shifted, a flicker of hope breaking through the shadows. "Together," he murmured, and for a moment I could see a glimmer of the man he once was, a protector, a guide, someone who had once shone brightly. But then the light flickered and the room darkened momentarily, the shadows closing in around us. I could feel the souls pressing against the edges of reality, their anguish echoing in my mind. "Help us," they cried, the sound rising to a crescendo. "No," the keeper shouted, anguish etching deep lines into his face. "I cannot allow them to take me." In that instant, I understood. The lighthouse was not just a place. It was a living entity, feeding off the emotions and fears of those who sought its guidance. It thrived on despair and hope alike, trapping both the keeper and the souls within its grasp. "You must fight back," I urged him, my voice rising above the chaos. "Remember who you are. You are not just a guardian of the light, you are its flame." His expression shifted, doubt warring with determination. "But I am lost," he whispered, the shadows around him thickening. "What if I cannot find my way back?" I stepped closer, reaching out my hand. "You are stronger than this. Together we can break the cycle. You can reclaim your purpose. You can be free." As our hands met, a surge of energy pulsed through the room, the light flaring brilliantly as the shadows writhed in protest. The knocking intensified, the souls crying out for release. In that moment, I felt a deep connection with the Keeper, a shared understanding of sacrifice and the weight of despair. "Together," I repeated, my voice steady. "Let us break the chains that bind us." With one final breath, he nodded, and as we stood united, the light surged brighter, illuminating the room and pushing back the shadows that had held us captive. The knocking ceased, replaced by a chorus of ethereal whispers, filled with hope and gratitude. In that instant, I realized that the lighthouse was not merely a prison. It was a beacon, a chance for redemption. As the darkness receded, I felt the weight of the past lift, and the air around us shimmered with possibility. But as the light enveloped us, I also sensed a lingering presence, a shadow that had yet to be faced. The battle was far from over, and the truth of the lighthouse still awaited revelation. "Let us find the way together," I whispered, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. The night was still young, and our journey had just begun. The brilliance of the light enveloped us, an incandescent glow that pushed back the darkness like the first rays of dawn breaking over a stormy sea. I felt an exhilarating rush of hope, but deep within me lurked an unsettling thought. This was only the beginning. The shadows had not disappeared entirely. They had merely retreated, regrouping in the corners of my mind. As I stood beside the Keeper, I could sense his internal struggle. His hollow eyes reflected a flicker of the vibrant man he had once been, a guardian whose light had once guided countless souls. "What do we do now?" I asked, my voice steady but laced with apprehension. "How do we free the others?" He glanced around the lantern room, the glass walls reverberating with whispers that seemed to echo from the very depths of the ocean. "We must confront the truth," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "The lighthouse's power comes from the souls it has ensnared. They are bound to this place, and their despair feeds the light. To set them free, we must confront their fears." I nodded, trying to comprehend the enormity of what lay ahead. The weight of the soul's anguish pressed against me, their presence palpable in the air. I could feel their longing, their desperation for release, a desperate plea that resonated in the very core of my being. "Where do we begin?" I asked, the uncertainty gnawing at me. The Keeper turned, his gaze piercing through the shimmering light as if searching for answers in the shadows. "The lantern room is a bridge," he said slowly. "It connects the world of the living with the realm of the lost. If we can channel our energies together, we may be able to reach them, to hear their stories and understand the pain that binds them." Taking a deep breath, I focused on the warmth of his presence beside me. "Then let's do it," I declared, determination coursing through my veins. "Let's reach out to them." As we stood united, I felt an electric current surge between us, a blend of hope and fear intertwining like the crashing waves outside. We closed our eyes and focused on the light, imagining it expanding outward like ripples in a pond. Slowly, the flickering glow began to pulse with intensity, illuminating the room with a soft, ethereal hue. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices melding together into a haunting melody that tugged at my heart. "Help us," they pleaded, their tones blending with the sound of the ocean crashing against the rocks below. "Release us from our torment." The keeper's expression shifted, a mixture of sadness and resolve etched on his features. "We must listen," he urged, his voice steady. "Each soul has a story, a reason for their pain. We cannot free them until we understand." I felt a wave of warmth wash over me as I concentrated on the voices, allowing their sorrow to wash over me. I could sense their presence, the weight of their burdens pressing against my chest. Images began to flicker in my mind, a shipwreck, a stormy sea, the cries of sailors lost to the depths. Suddenly, I was overwhelmed by the sensation of being pulled into another realm. The room around me began to fade, replaced by the turbulent expanse of the ocean under a stormy sky. I gasped, the salty air filling my lungs, and the roar of the waves crashing against the hull of a ship echoed in my ears. I stood on the deck of a vessel, surrounded by men frantically shouting orders. Panic surged within me as I tried to comprehend what was happening. The ship rocked violently, tossed about by the merciless waves. "Hold on," a voice shouted, but it was drowned out by the chaos of the storm. I looked around, disoriented, my heart racing as the scene unfolded. The men were battling against the tempest, desperately trying to keep the ship afloat. But as I watched, the mast cracked and splintered, sending splinters flying through the air. "Abandon ship," another voice yelled, but it was too late. In that moment, I realized these were the lost souls, the fishermen who had sacrificed everything to battle the sea, only to be swallowed by its depths. I felt their fear, their desperation, and above all, their regret. A deep sense of loss washed over me as the ship tilted precariously, and I knew I was witnessing their final moments. "Help us," they cried, their voices merging into a haunting chorus that echoed in my mind. I could see the faces of the men, etched with fear, desperation, and longing for freedom. Suddenly the scene shifted, and I found myself standing in a dimly lit room, shadows flickering along the walls. A man sat hunched over at a table, his head in his hands. I recognized him instantly. He was the keeper, Samuel, before he had become bound to the lighthouse. His expression was one of utter despair. "They are lost," he murmured, his voice a broken whisper. "I tried to save them. I thought I could guide them home, but I failed." My heart ached for him, for the weight of his sacrifice and the burden he carried. "You didn't fail," I wanted to shout, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I reached out, desperate to connect with him, to offer solace. In that moment, I understood. Samuel had carried the weight of his guilt for too long, believing he had let the souls down. But he hadn't. They were still here, still searching for closure. With every ounce of strength I had, I focused on reaching him, my thoughts intertwining with his. "You are not alone," I urged, hoping he could hear me. "You fought for them. You sacrificed everything. You must forgive yourself." As my words echoed in the room, a flicker of recognition crossed his face. "Forgive," he whispered, and for the first time I saw a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "Yes," I implored, feeling the energy in the air shift. "Let go of the burden. Help them find peace." The shadows around him flickered, trembling with the weight of unspoken sorrow. "I thought I could keep them safe," he replied, tears glistening in his eyes. "But I was wrong." "Then show them the way," I urged, my voice steady. "Guide them to the light. You can still be their beacon." As if responding to my words, the room brightened, and I felt a surge of warmth envelop me. The lost souls began to gather, their spectral forms swirling around Samuel, reaching out toward him with longing and desperation. In that moment, I understood that they were not just victims of the storm. They were souls trapped in time, yearning for release. Samuel's heart ached with regret, but as the light grew brighter, I sensed a shift within him, a realization that he could still fulfill his purpose. With a deep breath, Samuel straightened, his gaze steady as he looked at the souls surrounding him. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice trembling with emotion. "I failed to protect you, but I will not abandon you now. You deserve peace." As he spoke, the lantern room shimmered with light, and I felt a rush of energy surging through the air. The souls began to fade, their anguished expressions transforming into looks of gratitude and relief. They reached out, intertwining their essences with Samuel, merging into a brilliant light that illuminated the room. The knocking sound resonated louder, like a chorus of voices rising to the surface. "Thank you," they cried, their tones now filled with relief. "We are free." In that moment, I felt a profound connection with the Keeper and the souls he had guided. Together they soared into the light, their burdens lifted, their pain transformed into peace. But just as I felt the warmth of their release, a chill swept through the room. The shadows began to shift once more, darker and more menacing than before. A low growl echoed from the depths of the lighthouse, the sound reverberating through the very walls. "Not all souls wish to be freed," Samuel warned, his voice filled with dread. "Some are bound by anger, by vengeance. They will not let us go easily." My heart raced as I turned to face the growing darkness. I could feel it pressing in around us, a malevolent force rising from the depths of the lighthouse. "What do we do?" I asked, panic rising within me. "We must confront it," he replied, determination flooding his voice. "We cannot let it consume us. We must shine the light and drive the shadows away." I nodded, resolute. "Together we can do this." As we joined hands once more, I felt the energy surge between us, stronger than before. The lantern pulsed with brilliance, illuminating the room and pushing back the darkness. "Show yourselves," I shouted, my voice echoing against the walls. "We will not be afraid." As if in response, the shadows coalesced into a dark figure, a monstrous silhouette that loomed before us. Its eyes glowed with malevolence, filled with rage and despair. "You dare challenge me," it hissed, its voice like gravel scraping against stone. "I am the keeper of their pain, the warden of their suffering. You cannot escape." My heart pounded in my chest as I faced the darkness. "We will escape," I declared, the words erupting from me with an unexpected ferocity. "Your time is over. You have no power here." The figure howled in fury, the shadows swirling violently around it. But as I stood beside Samuel, I felt an overwhelming surge of strength. We were not alone. The souls we had freed surrounded us, their light merging with ours, pushing back against the encroaching darkness. The keeper's hand tightened around mine, and together we summoned the light, allowing it to shine brighter than ever before. The air crackled with energy, and the shadows began to recoil, their screams echoing in the room. Together, Samuel shouted, and I felt the pulse of our combined strength. We are not afraid. We are the light. With one final surge, we unleashed the energy, a blinding brilliance that engulfed the room. The darkness screamed, a sound of pure rage and anguish, but we stood firm, united in our purpose. As the light expanded, the figure began to dissolve, its form collapsing into the ether. The walls of the lighthouse trembled, and the air hummed with the echoes of liberation. Free at last, the voices of the liberated souls sang out, their melodies intertwining with the radiant light that filled the room. And then in an instant, the darkness was gone. The shadows receded, leaving only the gentle glow of the lighthouse behind. Panting, I turned to Samuel, our eyes meeting in a moment of shared triumph. We did it, I whispered, a sense of disbelief washing over me. Yes, he replied, a smile breaking through the weariness etched on his face. We did it together. But even in that moment of victory, I felt a lingering unease. The lighthouse stood before us still, a monument to both hope and despair. We had faced the darkness, but I knew that the journey was far from over. The light that guided us was also a reminder of the battles yet to be fought. Let's continue, I said, determination settling in my heart. There are more souls to help, more truths to uncover. As we prepared to leave the lantern room, I felt the weight of the past shift ever so slightly. The lighthouse may have been extinguished, but its light had not been snuffed out. We would carry it forward together. The night was still young, and our journey had only just begun. As we descended the spiral staircase of the lighthouse, the air around us felt charged, electric with the remnants of our victory. The soft glow of the lantern flickered behind us, casting long shadows that danced along the damp stone walls. Each step reverberated with the echoes of the souls we had freed, their whispered gratitude hanging in the air like the scent of salt water after a storm. Yet even as I basked in the warmth of our success, an unsettling sensation gnawed at my insides. The darkness had not been entirely vanquished. I could feel it lurking just beyond the fringes of our triumph, waiting for an opportunity to strike again. What's next? I asked Samuel, my voice barely above a whisper as we reached the bottom of the staircase. He paused, his expression thoughtful, brows furrowed, as he stared at the heavy door that led out into the cold night. We need to confront the source of the shadows, he replied, a solemn gravity in his tone. The lighthouse holds many secrets, secrets that tie us to this place and to each other. Until we uncover them, we remain vulnerable. I nodded, my heart racing at the thought of what lay ahead. But how do we uncover these secrets? I asked, glancing back at the now quiet lantern room, the air still thick with residual energy. What are we looking for? Memories, he said, his voice steady. We must delve into the past, both mine and those who have come before us. We can use the light as a conduit, a way to access the memories trapped within these walls. Taking a deep breath, I steeled myself for what was to come. Then let's do it, I replied, determination flooding my veins. Let's shine a light on the truth. Samuel stepped forward, his hand resting on the heavy door. Stay close, he said, his voice low. The shadows may still be watching. With that, he pushed the door open, and we stepped into the cool night air. The world outside was a stark contrast to the oppressive atmosphere within the lighthouse. The moon hung high in the sky, casting a silvery glow over the rocky coastline. Waves crashed against the cliffs, their rhythmic sound a reminder of the relentless power of the ocean. As we made our way along the narrow path that led to the edge of the cliff, I could feel the chill of the night creeping into my bones. The wind howled, carrying with it a sense of foreboding. "This is where it happened," Samuel said, his voice barely audible over the roar of the waves. "The storm that claimed so many lives." I looked out at the turbulent sea, the water churning beneath the moonlight. It was beautiful yet terrifying, a reminder of nature's indifference. "What do we do now?" I asked, scanning the shoreline for any signs of what had occurred here. Samuel closed his eyes for a moment, his face contorting with emotion. "We must remember," he whispered. "I need to access the memories, to feel what they felt in those final moments." I watched as he took a deep breath, grounding himself in the present. He stood at the edge of the cliff, the wind whipping around him like a tempest. "Help me," he implored, his voice steadying. "Together we can call forth their memories." I joined him, standing side by side, the wind pushing against us as we faced the churning sea. "I'm here with you," I assured him, placing my hand on his shoulder. "Let's shine our light together." With a shared determination, we focused on the glow that emanated from the lighthouse, imagining it growing brighter and expanding outward like a beacon across the stormy sea. The energy surged around us, and I felt the connection deepen, intertwining our intentions with the essence of the lighthouse itself. As we concentrated, I felt the air grow thick with emotion, memories flooding the space around us. I could see flickers of shadowy figures moving beneath the waves, their faces twisted in anguish and desperation. "Help us," they cried, their voices merging with the wind, filling my ears with a haunting melody. Samuel shuddered beside me, his eyes squeezed shut as he began to tremble. "They're here," he gasped, his voice strained. "I can feel them, their pain, their fear." "Channel it," I urged, squeezing his shoulder. "Let it guide you. Remember what happened here." With a sudden jolt, Samuel's body stiffened. I watched in awe as the shadows began to coalesce into shapes, figures emerging from the depths of the water. I could see men in tattered clothing, their faces filled with despair, pleading silently for release. "Keep going," I encouraged him, my heart racing. "You're doing it. I can see them," he murmured, his voice trembling. "I can see the storm, the ship," and suddenly the world around us shifted. The night vanished, replaced by the chaos of a raging tempest. I felt myself pulled into the scene, the wind howling louder than ever before, rain lashing against my skin as I stood on the deck of a ship, just as I had seen in my earlier vision. The men around me were frantic, their shouts lost in the roar of the storm. The ship pitched violently, water crashing over the bow as the mast cracked and splintered. I could feel their fear, their desperation as they fought against the elements. "Hold on," someone shouted, but the storm was merciless, tossing the vessel like a toy. I looked around, panic rising in my chest. This was real, this was their last stand against the sea. My heart ached for them, and I knew I had to act. "We have to help them," I cried, but my voice was lost in the cacophony of the storm. In that moment I saw Samuel's face beside me, his expression filled with determination. "We can guide them," he shouted over the storm. "We must show them the way to safety." I nodded, adrenaline coursing through me. "Let's do it. Shine the light." With that, we focused on the energy between us, channeling it toward the struggling souls. "You are not alone," we cried together. "We are here. Follow the light." As the words escaped our lips, a radiant beam erupted from our combined energies, slicing through the darkness of the storm. The light illuminated the ship, casting away the shadows and revealing the terrified faces of the sailors. I watched as their eyes widened, the realization dawning upon them. One by one they began to turn, drawn to the brilliant glow that promised hope amid despair. "Follow us," I urged, my heart racing as they moved toward the light. But as they approached, the shadows grew darker, coiling around the ship like serpents, hissing with fury. "No," a voice thundered from the depths of the storm, dark and angry. "You will not take them." I felt the ground shake beneath me, the very essence of the storm retaliating against our light. "We have to fight back," I shouted to Samuel, panic bubbling within me. "Together," he shouted, his face set with resolve. "We must amplify the light." I felt the power surge between us once more, a brilliant force that resonated with the cries of the sailors. "We are the light. We will not be afraid." As we focused our energies, the beam intensified, pushing back against the darkness that sought to reclaim the souls. The shadows writhed and screamed, the air crackling with energy. "You are free," we called, our voices rising above the chaos. "Leave this place." The sailors surged forward, drawn to the light like moths to a flame. I could see the fear melt away from their faces as they embraced the glow, the darkness losing its grip. They were escaping, breaking free from the chains of the storm. But just as it seemed we would prevail, the voice of the storm roared once more, a furious wind howling through the air. "You cannot save them," it bellowed, its presence heavy and suffocating. "They belong to me." In that moment, I felt a surge of defiance rise within me. "No," I cried, my heart pounding with determination. "They will not be yours. We will not let you claim them." With a final push, we unleashed the light, a blinding brilliance that filled the night. The shadows screamed in fury, retreating as the sailors surged forward, finally escaping the grasp of the storm. I felt a wave of relief wash over me as the darkness began to dissipate, the storm fading into the distance. As the last of the sailors crossed into the light, I glanced at Samuel, our eyes meeting in a moment of shared triumph. "We did it," I breathed, disbelief mingling with exhilaration. "Yes," he replied, a smile breaking across his face. "They are free." But just as the storm receded, I sensed a new presence emerging from the shadows, something darker, more sinister than before. A chill ran down my spine as I turned to face the gathering darkness. "What now?" I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. "We must face it," Samuel replied, his voice steady despite the fear etched on his face. "We have come too far to turn back now. Whatever it is, we will confront it together." With renewed determination, we stood side by side, ready to face the unknown. The night was still young, but I could feel the weight of the battle ahead pressing down on us. As the darkness swirled, I knew our journey was far from over. Together we would uncover the truth and find a way to dispel the shadows once and for all. The air crackled with tension as the remnants of the storm faded, replaced by an eerie stillness. The shadows coalesced into a dark mass, swirling like a living entity, and I felt a chill wash over me. The figures of the sailors we had just freed faded into the ether, their gratitude lingering in the air like a soft whisper, but now we were left alone to confront this new menace. "Do you feel that?" Samuel's voice broke through the silence, low and urgent. His eyes were locked onto the growing darkness, which pulsed like a heartbeat. "It's different from before. This isn't just a remnant of the storm, it's something else." I nodded, the weight of his words sinking in. The shadows felt sentient, as if they were aware of our presence and were coiling tighter, plotting their next move. "What do we do?" I asked, my voice steady but laced with uncertainty. "How do we fight this?" "We need to focus on the light," Samuel replied, determination shining in his eyes. "It has guided us so far. If we channel our energy into it, we might stand a chance." I took a deep breath, grounding myself in the moment. "Together," I asked, glancing at him. "Always," he affirmed. We stepped closer, our hands clasped tightly. The connection felt electric, a current of energy flowing between us. I could sense the warmth of the lighthouse behind us, its spirit encouraging us to harness the light within. "Let's not just defend ourselves," I said, emboldened. "Let's push it back. Let's reclaim this space." With a shared nod, we began to concentrate, drawing in every ounce of energy we could muster. I envisioned the light expanding, filling the night sky with warmth and brilliance. It surged around us, a glowing sphere that pulsed in rhythm with our hearts. As we focused, the shadows writhed, their movements growing frantic. "You think you can resist?" a voice hissed from the depths, dark and chilling, echoing around us like a haunting melody. "You think you can challenge me? I am the darkness that lingers in the hearts of men. I am despair." "Not tonight," Samuel shouted, his voice ringing with authority. "We will not let you win. We are the light, and we will shine brighter than your darkness." With a fierce intensity, we pushed the light forward, directing it toward the mass of shadows. The glow expanded, illuminating the space around us and revealing faces within the darkness, twisted expressions of anguish, eyes filled with despair, remnants of souls trapped in a cycle of suffering. I felt their pain resonate within me, a haunting echo of the lives they had lived. "Remember who you are," I cried, desperation creeping into my voice. "You are not alone. You are free to leave this darkness behind." As the light surged forward, the shadows recoiled, twisting and contorting as if they were being burned. "You cannot save them all," the voice boomed, an icy laugh piercing through the air. "They are mine to claim." I felt a surge of anger rise within me. "No," I shouted defiantly. "They deserve better than this. They deserve to be free." The darkness surged back, pushing against our light with a malevolent force. I felt it clawing at my mind, whispering doubts and fears, dredging up memories I had tried to forget. "You're not strong enough," it taunted. "You'll never defeat me." I closed my eyes, focusing on Samuel beside me. His presence was a beacon of strength, and I could feel the bond between us deepening. "We can do this," I whispered, drawing on every ounce of courage I possessed. Together. We opened our eyes, and with renewed determination, we directed our energy once more. The light pulsed with our combined resolve, brighter and more powerful than before. "You have no hold on us," Samuel declared, his voice unwavering. "We choose hope." The shadows howled, a cacophony of anger and despair that resonated through the air. But our light pushed forward, a radiant wave that swept through the darkness, illuminating everything in its path. I could see the faces of the trapped souls, their features shifting from anguish to surprise as the light washed over them. "Let go," I cried, urging them with every fiber of my being. "Follow the light. Find your peace." One by one, I saw them begin to move, the light guiding them toward freedom. The darkness writhed in fury, losing its grip as the souls embraced the glow. "No, you will regret this," the voice screeched, filled with rage. But we pressed on, the power of the light flooding the space around us. The shadows began to dissipate, and the air filled with the sounds of liberation, soft whispers of thanks mingling with the rush of the wind. "Keep going," Samuel urged, his grip tightening around my hand. "We can't stop now." With a final surge of energy, we pushed the light forward, flooding the darkness with brilliance. The shadows screamed, their forms breaking apart as they were consumed by the glow. And then in an instant, the darkness shattered like glass. The air shifted, and I felt the weight lift from my shoulders, the oppressive energy dissipating into nothingness. Panting, I glanced around, disbelief washing over me. We had done it. The shadows were gone, leaving only the soft glow of the lighthouse behind. Samuel turned to me, his eyes filled with triumph and relief. "We did it," he breathed, a smile breaking across his face. "Yes," I replied, tears of joy welling in my eyes. "We really did." But just as we began to celebrate our victory, a soft glow emerged from the remnants of the darkness, a figure coalescing from the shadows. My heart sank as I realized it wasn't just any figure. It was the embodiment of despair itself, a being woven from the very darkness we had just vanquished. "You think this is over," it said, its voice smooth and seductive. "I will always return. I am the darkness in every heart, the fear that lingers. You may have won this battle, but the war is far from over." With that, the figure dissolved into a cloud of shadow, disappearing into the night. I felt a chill creep back into my bones, the words echoing ominously in my mind. "Samuel," I whispered, a sense of dread washing over me. "What does this mean?" He looked at me, determination flickering in his eyes. "It means we must remain vigilant. We have shown our strength tonight, but the fight is far from finished. We will face whatever comes next together." As the moon illuminated the coastline, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The lighthouse had stood against the storm, and so would we. Together we would confront the darkness, determined to shine our light in the shadows, no matter the cost. Our journey was just beginning, and I could feel the weight of destiny pressing down on us. With the lighthouse as our guide, we would face the unknown, unearthing the secrets that lay buried within its walls and within ourselves. I hope you enjoyed the first story. If you did, don't forget to leave a like, but if I didn't do my job well, feel free to give it a thumbs down. Either way, drop a comment and let us know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, let's continue. Have you ever felt like you were being watched? The question hung in the air, heavy and unnerving, as I stepped onto the fairgrounds of a small Ohio town. The vibrant lights of the carnival illuminated the night, casting long shadows that danced with the flickering glow. Children laughed, couples strolled hand in hand, and the smell of popcorn mingled with something far less pleasant, a hint of rust and decay. I was drawn to the Ferris wheel, a towering structure that loomed over the fair. It had been the site of a tragedy, a fatal accident that left the community shaken. They said the ride had been shut down since that day, yet here it stood, an eerie giant, its cabins gleaming under the lights, waiting for its next unwitting victims. I shivered, though the night was warm. I felt something, a chill that slithered down my spine. Was it just the wind, or was it something else? As I walked closer, I noticed the sound, a low creaking, rhythmic like a heartbeat. I paused, my heart racing. The air felt thick, pressing against my chest. I looked around, no one else seemed to notice. They were lost in their own worlds, their laughter echoing against the metal of the ride. I approached the base of the Ferris wheel, peering up at its towering height. The cabin swung slightly, though there was no breeze. I shook my head, trying to dismiss the growing unease. I had always loved fairs, the thrill of the rides, the sweet indulgence of cotton candy. Yet tonight was different. Tonight there was a weight in the air, a feeling of anticipation that curled in my stomach. I thought about the tragedy, the young woman who had vanished without a trace. They never found her body, just pieces of the ride scattered across the ground. It was as if she had been swallowed whole. The more I thought about it, the more the shadows around the Ferris wheel seemed to deepen, stretching into the darkness like tendrils. Suddenly I heard it again, a soft whispering sound, barely audible over the noise of the fair. I turned, scanning the crowd. My eyes caught a glimpse of movement in one of the cabins, a figure shrouded in darkness. I squinted, trying to discern its features, but it was gone as quickly as it had appeared. My breath caught in my throat. Was I imagining things? The laughter faded into the background, replaced by the thudding of my own heart. I took a step back, instinctively looking around for reassurance. But the faces I saw were blurred, their joy distant and unreachable. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead. The sense of being watched intensified, pressing down on me, suffocating. I turned to leave, but something held me there. A compulsion, a need to understand what I had seen. My feet moved of their own accord, lighting me back to the Ferris wheel. The creaking sound grew louder, echoing in my ears. I could almost feel the pull of the cabins, beckoning me closer. I reached out to touch the cold metal, the texture rough against my fingertips. The moment I made contact, a rush of images flooded my mind, flashes of laughter, screams, and then silence. I staggered back, overwhelmed. What was happening? In that instant I saw it again, a shadow in the cabin, still and watchful. My instincts screamed at me to run, but curiosity rooted me to the spot. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting for me. The air felt electric, charged with a sense of danger I couldn't quite grasp. Just a trick of the light, I muttered under my breath, but the words felt hollow. I turned, ready to escape this unsettling place, when I caught a glimpse of movement out of the corner of my eye. The cabin swayed, and I could swear I saw a hand, pale and thin, pressing against the glass. My heart raced. I took a step back, breathing hard. The sounds of the fair blurred into a chaotic symphony around me. I could feel the darkness creeping in, and I knew this was just the beginning. The abyss beneath the Ferris wheel was calling, and I was about to answer. I stumbled backward, my breath hitching in my throat. The world around me blurred. Laughter and chatter faded into a dull roar, replaced by the pounding of my heart. The shadows beneath the Ferris wheel seemed to stretch further, creeping along the ground like dark fingers reaching for me. What had I seen? A trick of the light, I tried to convince myself. But the memory of that pale hand pressed against the glass clawed at my mind. It felt real, visceral, a ghostly reminder of the tragedy that had unfolded here. I wanted to scream to alert someone, but my voice felt trapped somewhere deep within me. I was a spectator to my own terror. The crowd continued to swirl around me, blissfully unaware of the lurking dread that clung to me like a second skin. I glanced back at the Ferris wheel. The cabins loomed ominously, still and silent, yet they felt alive, pulsating with some unseen energy. A chill ran through me as I contemplated the possibility that the stories were true, that the dead could linger in places where their lives had abruptly ended. As I took a cautious step forward, my gaze locked onto the cabin that had held the figure. I felt a strange pull, an insatiable curiosity mixed with fear. What if the woman who had disappeared was still there, trapped in that moment? The thought sent a shiver down my spine. I couldn't let my imagination spiral out of control. I had to face this head-on. With each step closer, I focused on the details around me. The vibrant colors of the fair faded to dull shades as the Ferris wheel consumed my attention. The ground beneath my feet felt uneven, the gravel crunching loudly in the silence that surrounded me. I fought the urge to turn and run, my mind racing with questions. Was it guilt that drove me forward, or a desire for closure? The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices weaving through my thoughts, pulling me toward the ride. I reached the base and my eyes traced the outlines of the cabins, searching for any sign of movement. There it was again, the unmistakable shadow, a flicker of something just out of reach. My pulse quickened. It was as if the cabin was a portal, a window to another reality. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to step closer. The air grew thick, heavy, with an unsettling energy. My fingers brushed the cool metal railing, grounding me momentarily. As I looked up, the sky above shifted from dark to something deeper, a vast emptiness that mirrored the void below. Then a sudden crash echoed behind me. I whirled around, heart racing. A nearby stall had fallen over, spilling stuffed animals and brightly colored prizes across the ground. The sound jolted me, breaking the spell that the Ferris wheel had cast. People rushed toward the commotion, their laughter replaced by shouts of concern. I hesitated, torn between the safety of the crowd and the pull of the ride. I glanced back at the Ferris wheel, my heart still pounding. The figure, whatever it was, could be waiting for me. But I couldn't just abandon this filing. A small part of me felt drawn to the truth, to uncover what lay beneath the surface. Taking a deep breath, I turned back to the Ferris wheel. I stepped forward, closer than I had ever been. I looked up at the cabin, my mind racing. If I could just see it, if I could look into that space, I could find answers. Suddenly the night was pierced by a sound, a shrill scream that sent shivers down my spine. It wasn't just the accident at the stall. This scream was filled with terror, raw and haunting. It echoed through the fair, reverberating in my bones. I felt the crowd freeze, the laughter silenced. All eyes turned to the Ferris wheel. Without thinking, I sprinted toward the ride. My instincts kicked in, propelling me forward as adrenaline surged through my veins. I reached the entrance, my breath coming in gasps, and pushed through the barrier meant to keep people away. The cabin swayed slightly, as if anticipating my arrival. I could hear the whispers again, louder now, swirling around me. "Help me," they seemed to say, echoing in the depths of my mind. I hesitated, dread clawing at my insides. What if I found something I wasn't ready to face? But the scream lingered, wrapping around me like a shroud. I had to know. As I stepped into the shadow of the cabin, the air thickened, almost electric. My pulse raced and the shadows danced along the walls. I could almost feel the presence of the woman, the one they had lost. The door to the cabin creaked open, revealing the darkness within. I stepped inside, my heart pounding in my chest. The cabin was empty, at least on the surface. I scanned the small space, searching for any sign of the figure, any clue that could explain what I had seen. The metal seat felt cold under my hand, and I hesitated before sitting down. The whispers intensified, rising to a fever pitch, as if the ride itself was alive with memories. In that moment, I understood. This wasn't just a fairground attraction, it was a vessel of fear, a keeper of lost souls. I was not alone. The shadows pulsed around me, and I could feel the weight of unseen eyes watching, waiting. The abyss beneath the Ferris wheel was drawing me in, and there was no turning back now. The darkness inside the cabin wrapped around me like a suffocating blanket. My breath quickened as I struggled to process the overwhelming sensations. The whispers surged, a cacophony of voices overlapping, each one vying for attention. They felt familiar yet alien, like fragments of a long-forgotten dream. I forced myself to focus, scanning the cramped space for any sign of the figure I had seen earlier. The metal walls were cold and unyielding, a stark contrast to the warmth of the fair outside. I could hear the distant sounds of laughter and music, but they felt muted, as if they were coming from another world. As I settled into the seat, the fabric felt damp, a strange chill creeping into my bones. I shuddered and looked out through the glass. The fairground sprawled below, a patchwork of colors and lights. But as I stared into the night, the lights seemed to flicker ominously, almost as if they were winking at me, taunting me. Suddenly I felt it, a soft pressure on my shoulder, as if someone had just brushed past me. I spun around, heart racing, but the cabin remained empty. My pulse hammered in my ears, drowning out the whispers that swirled around me. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination, a trick of the mind spurred by fear. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. The atmosphere thickened, a palpable tension hanging in the air. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead as I leaned closer to the window. Outside, the fairground looked different. Shadows loomed larger, twisting into grotesque shapes that made my skin crawl. My heart raced as I strained to listen, I could almost make out words among the whispers, frantic, desperate. "Help! Find me!" The voice was distinct, piercing through the fog of confusion. I pressed my hands against the glass, searching for its source, but the fair remained oblivious to the darkness encroaching. A flash of movement caught my eye. Another shadow darted past the edge of the cabin, too quick to identify. My breath hitched, panic began to seep into my veins. Suddenly the cabin jerked, the metal groaning as if responding to some unseen force. I stumbled in my seat, grabbing the railing for support. The wheel creaked under a weight that shouldn't have been there, and I felt a surge of terror. What if it started moving? What if I was trapped here, suspended in this nightmarish reality? But then the whispers crescendoed, urging me forward, begging for release. "You have to see," they whispered, "you have to know." Compelled by a force I couldn't resist, I unbuckled my seatbelt and stood, trembling as I reached for the door. It swung open with a haunting creak, revealing the world outside that now felt foreign and foreboding. The ground seemed to shift beneath me as I stepped out, the familiar fairground morphing into something sinister. The shadows danced closer, wrapping around my ankles like tendrils of smoke. I took a hesitant step forward, my heart racing. "Where are you?" I whispered, the question barely escaping my lips. I strained to hear any response, but the air was heavy with silence. The whispers grew softer, morphing into a single, haunting voice. "Help me find me." I felt a chill sweep over me, a wave of despair that seeped into my bones. It was as if the night itself was mourning, weeping for the lost soul trapped in the darkness. I glanced around, searching for the source, but the crowd remained blissfully ignorant, their laughter echoing through the air like a cruel joke. In that moment I caught sight of a figure, silhouetted against the lights of the fair. It stood just beyond the reach of illumination, partially obscured by shadows. My heart raced as I took a step toward it, an irresistible urge pulling me closer. The figure seemed to sway, its form flickering like a dying flame. "Is it you?" I called out, my voice shaky and uncertain. "Are you the one I saw?" The figure paused, tilting its head slightly as if considering my words. It was a fleeting moment, but I could have sworn I saw a flash of recognition in its stance. The figure gestured for me to come closer, beckoning with an ethereal hand. I hesitated, a sense of foreboding prickling at the back of my mind. The whispers surged again, louder now, drowning out the sounds of the fair. "You have to help her. You have to find her." The urgency in their tone sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. I took another step forward, drawn in by the figure's haunting presence. As I drew closer, the lights flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced around us. I could see the figure more clearly now, a woman, her features obscured by darkness, but her expression was one of desperation, a silent plea etched across her face. She reached out, and I felt an icy gust of wind wash over me, chilling me to the core. "Help me," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the chaos of the fair. "I'm trapped beneath the wheel." The weight of her words pressed heavily upon me, igniting a sense of dread. I felt the ground shift beneath my feet, as if the very earth was urging me to flee. But I couldn't abandon her. I couldn't leave this lost soul to wander the shadows alone. With determination coursing through my veins, I extended my hand toward her. "I'll help you. I promise. Just tell me how." The figure's expression shifted, a glimmer of hope flickering in her eyes. But just as quickly, darkness swelled around her, threatening to engulf us both. The shadows clawed at my feet, tugging me back, urging me to run. "Find the truth," she implored, her voice now rising above the whispers. "It's the only way." Before I could grasp her meaning, the shadows surged, pulling me away. I stumbled back, the fairground spinning wildly around me. The last thing I saw was her outstretched hand, reaching for me through the encroaching darkness before everything dissolved into chaos. I fell to the ground, gasping for breath, the noise of the fair crashing back in like a tidal wave. I blinked rapidly, trying to orient myself as laughter and music surged around me once more. But the weight of what I had seen remained, pressing heavily on my heart. I had to find the truth. I had to uncover what lay beneath the Ferris wheel, where shadows danced and lost souls lingered. As I rose to my feet, the night air felt electric, crackling with potential and danger. The abyss was waiting, and I was ready to confront it. I staggered to my feet, my heart pounding in my chest like a war drum. The fairground buzzed around me, alive with the sounds of laughter and music, but the joyous atmosphere felt like a thin veil over something darker. I could still feel her presence, the woman from the shadows, her plea echoing in my mind. "Find the truth," she had said. But what truth? I forced myself to breathe deeply, grounding myself in the present. The Ferris wheel loomed behind me, its cabins swaying gently in the night breeze. I had to get back there to confront whatever lay beneath it. I had to understand why her spirit was trapped and how I could help her. I glanced at the ground, my mind racing as I retraced my steps. The thrill of the fair was fading, replaced by a gnawing sense of urgency. I began to walk, my pace quickening as I navigated through the crowds. Each laugh and shout felt distant, muted, as I focused on my destination. As I approached the Ferris wheel again, the atmosphere shifted. The air grew thicker, charged with a strange energy that prickled my skin. Shadows gathered in corners, twisting and coiling like smoke. I could see the entrance to the ride, a gate that seemed to loom larger, more forbidding than before. It was as if the darkness was aware of me, watching, waiting. I stepped past the barriers, heart racing as I neared the base of the wheel. The cold metal felt alive beneath my fingertips, and I closed my eyes for a moment, centering myself. I could almost hear her voice again, guiding me. Beneath the wheel. My mind raced with possibilities. What could be beneath? I remembered the stories of the tragic accident, the way the ride had malfunctioned, the horror of that day. I had to uncover what had been buried, not just physically, but emotionally. The secrets this place held were festering, waiting to be unearthed. I moved to the edge of the ride, glancing around to ensure I was still alone. The crowd seemed a world away, oblivious to the weight of the shadows gathering here. I knelt down, inspecting the ground beneath the Ferris wheel, my fingers brushing against the cool earth. Suddenly something caught my eye, a glimmer of metal poking through the dirt. I brushed away the grime, revealing a rusted piece of machinery, a remnant of the ride's past. My breath quickened as I realized it might be a part of the very mechanism that had failed. Could this be what had caused the tragedy? I felt a surge of dread, a pulse of fear racing through my veins. I could almost hear the whispers again, but this time they were clearer, more distinct. Look deeper, find the heart. Find the heart, I muttered to myself, confused. I scanned the area, searching for any indication of what that might mean. The whispers seemed to beckon, guiding me to a small, unkempt area at the base of the wheel. The grass was trampled, the earth disturbed, as if something had been hastily buried. I knelt down again, digging my fingers into the soil. It was hard work, the ground packed and stubborn. But I couldn't stop now. Each handful of dirt I removed felt like a step closer to unveiling the truth. I thought of the woman's eyes filled with desperation. I couldn't turn back. As I continued to dig, the whispers grew louder, swirling around me in a frantic crescendo. I paused for a moment, heart racing, overwhelmed by the intensity of the moment. Then, with renewed determination, I resumed my task. My hands were covered in dirt, but I pressed on, feeling an inexplicable connection to the ground beneath me. Finally, my fingers struck something solid. I pulled back the dirt to reveal a small, rusted box, the kind that seemed lost to time. It was locked, the mechanism rusted shut, but I could see symbols etched into its surface, faded yet familiar. My heart raced. This felt significant. I reached for the box, pulling it free from its earthly prison. As I did, the air around me seemed to shift. The whispers quieted to an eerie stillness. I could feel the weight of unseen eyes watching me, waiting for my next move. What lay inside this box? Was it a clue to the woman's fate or something more sinister? I examined it closely, searching for a way to open it. My fingers traced the surface, feeling the grooves and ridges. There had to be a way. Suddenly, a surge of energy pulsed through me, and the box rattled violently in my hands. I jumped back, startled. The air thickened with tension, the shadows around me swirling, coalescing into darker shapes. I could feel a presence moving closer, and fear shot through me like a bolt of lightning. "Find me," the voice called again, desperate and pleading. I gripped the box tightly, steeling myself. I had come too far to turn back now. With a deep breath, I resolved to confront whatever lay within. I took the box and held it up, positioning it in the faint light of the fair. I began to search for any mechanism to open it, my pulse racing as the darkness loomed. The fairground noises faded once more, leaving only the sound of my own breathing and the frantic whispers. "Help her," they urged, their intensity growing. The box felt hot in my hands, a tangible connection to the woman I was determined to save. With a sudden determination, I struck the box against the ground, hoping to jolt it open. The clang of metal against dirt echoed sharply in the night. For a moment, nothing happened. But then the box trembled violently, and a loud crack split the air. It sprang open, releasing a cloud of dust and a chill that swept through me. I gasped as a dark mist poured out, swirling around me in a tempest of shadows. I stumbled back, my heart racing. The whispers crescendoed, transforming into anguished cries. The mist coalesced into a form, a shape emerging from the chaos. I braced myself, feeling the weight of fear pressing down on my chest. The air grew cold, and I realized I had unleashed something. Something that had been trapped for far too long. As the mist settled, the figure took shape, revealing the woman I had seen before, her face pale and gaunt, eyes wide with fear and longing. "You found me," she whispered, her voice a haunting echo. "But now you must help me finish what was started." My heart raced as I faced her. I had opened the box, but at what cost? I could feel the energy around us pulsing with an ominous rhythm. The truth was close, but so was danger. I had to find a way to help her, to set her free. The abyss beneath the Ferris wheel had been waiting for this moment, and I was about to dive deeper into its depths. The air crackled with tension as I stood before her, the woman's spectral form swirling with shadows, her eyes reflecting a desperate longing. I could feel the weight of her anguish pressing in on me, suffocating and raw. "You found me," she whispered again, the words laced with a chilling urgency. "But the truth is buried deeper. You must help me before it's too late." "Help you how?" I stammered, my voice barely above a whisper. The whispers around me had grown into a tumultuous roar, a cacophony of voices urging me onward, echoing her words. My heart raced, caught in the throes of fear and resolve. She gestured toward the Ferris wheel, the massive structure looming ominously against the night sky. Beneath the wheel lies the heart of the tragedy, the mechanism that failed, that trapped me here. You must uncover it before the night ends, or I will be lost forever. Panic surged through me. I glanced around, half expecting the crowd to notice the chaos unraveling before them. But they were blissfully unaware, their laughter mingling with the music, as if the darkness I was facing was a world apart. I turned back to her, my determination ignited. "I'll find it. I promise." The shadows thickened, wrapping around her form like tendrils, and I could see the fear etched across her features. "Hurry," she urged, her voice growing fainter, before the wheel turns again. With a jolt, I tore my gaze from her, scrambling toward the base of the Ferris wheel. The whispers intensified, a whirlwind of desperation fueling my movements. I knelt down once more, my fingers digging into the dirt where I had unearthed the box. The earth felt alive, pulsing with a dark energy that both terrified and compelled me. I could hear the Ferris wheel creaking ominously overhead, the cabins swaying gently as if anticipating the night's impending chaos. The cold air wrapped around me, heavy with the weight of the past, and I focused on the task at hand. "Where are you?" I whispered to the ground, searching for any sign of the mechanism that had caused such devastation. As I continued to dig, I felt a shift in the air, a tremor that sent chills racing down my spine. I paused, glancing over my shoulder at the ghostly figure of the woman. She watched me intently, her expression a mix of hope and fear. "You're close," she urged, her voice trembling. "But time is running out." With renewed determination, I pushed my hands deeper into the earth, feeling for anything that might give. The soil was damp and packed, but as I excavated more, I felt something solid beneath my fingertips. My heart raced as I uncovered a piece of metal, a rusted panel, part of the very machinery that had failed. "Come on," I muttered to myself, pulling at the edges with all my strength. The ground resisted, but I wasn't about to give up. I grasped the panel, my fingers slipping against the cold, rusted surface. With a final heave, I pulled it free, sending dirt flying. As I did, a gust of wind swept through, chilling me to the bone. The whispers morphed into frantic cries, urging me to keep going. I dropped the panel to the side, revealing a gaping hole beneath, a darkness that felt alive, pulsating with secrets and sorrow. I glanced back at the woman, whose form flickered with the shadows. "What do I do?" I cried, my voice cracking under the pressure. "How do I free you?" "Reach inside," she urged, her voice gaining strength. "Find the heart of the mechanism, the source of my binding. Only then will I be free." Terror gripped me, but I had no choice. I knelt at the edge of the hole, peering into the darkness that seemed to stretch endlessly. The air was thick with an ancient energy, and I could hear the machinery's low hum beneath the surface. I took a deep breath, steeling myself against the fear that threatened to engulf me. Reaching into the darkness, I felt around, my fingers grazing over cold, metallic surfaces. Each touch sent a jolt of energy through me, and I could feel the weight of the woman's presence urging me forward. "You're doing well," she whispered, her voice a steadying force in the storm of my anxiety. Then my fingers brushed against something warm, alive. I gasped and pulled it into the light, a small, glowing orb nestled among the machinery. It pulsed gently, illuminating the darkness around me with a soft, eerie glow. I realized with a start that this must be the heart she spoke of. The orb felt warm against my palm, and as I cradled it, I could feel the echoes of past pain and fear coursing through it. "This is it," I breathed, my heart racing. "This is what you need." "Yes," she urged, her voice ringing with hope. "Now you must release it. Let it go back to where it belongs." "But how?" I cried, feeling the pressure of the night bearing down on me. The shadows around us surged with energy, and I could sense the darkness growing restless, as if aware that its hold on her was slipping. "Place it back," she commanded, her voice echoing with urgency. "It must return to the heart of the mechanism." With a nod, I steeled myself and leaned over the hole. The orb felt heavy in my hand, imbued with a power that thrummed with life. I took a deep breath and released it, watching as it floated toward the center of the machinery, illuminating the darkened space. As it settled into place, a wave of energy surged through the air, a brilliant light exploding from the orb. The shadows recoiled, twisting and writhing in defiance as the light flooded the area. I shielded my eyes, feeling the warmth wash over me like a protective embrace. The woman's form began to shimmer, her features becoming clearer, more vibrant. "You did it," she cried, her voice ringing with joy. "You freed me from my prison." But even as she spoke, I felt a sudden chill sweep through me, a deepening darkness clawing at the edges of my consciousness. The light from the orb flickered, and I could feel the shadows trying to reclaim their hold. "No," I shouted, panic rising within me. "Stay with me." "I can't," she said, her voice filled with both sadness and relief. "But you have given me the chance to move on." "Thank you." "Remember, the light will always shine against the dark." With that, her form began to dissolve into shimmering particles, drifting away into the night. I reached out, desperation clawing at my heart, but it was too late. The shadows around me twisted violently, the darkness rushing back in as the light flickered and dimmed. I staggered back, overwhelmed by the surge of energy that surged through the air. The Ferris wheel creaked ominously, and I could hear the echoes of the fairground fading into the distance. The night felt heavy, filled with an eerie silence that left me breathless. As the last remnants of her spirit disappeared, I fell to my knees, overwhelmed by the weight of what had just transpired. I had faced the abyss, unearthed its secrets, and yet the shadows still lingered, clawing at the edges of my mind. I had found the truth, but it felt bittersweet, a fleeting victory against the relentless tide of darkness. I glanced back at the Ferris wheel, knowing that the echoes of the past would linger, but I also felt a flicker of hope within me. The night may have been dark, but I had found a way to bring light to it, however briefly. With a deep breath, I stood up, determined to leave this place behind, but knowing that its shadows would forever haunt me. I stepped away from the Ferris wheel, the echoes of the fair still ringing in my ears, and as I walked into the night, I knew that I would carry her memory with me, a reminder of the light that could pierce through the darkest of shadows. You made it to the end of the stories. That means it's the perfect time to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And if you haven't already, leave a like and drop a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have a great time relaxing, and good night.